I bid you welcome to Montober. Today I'm talking about Frankenstein, also 1931, starring Boris Karloff and Colin Quive, and Edward Van Sloan, again as Dr. Waldman. We all know the plot. Frankenstein creates a monster, and right off the bat, this film wastes no time with the atmosphere, with shots in a cemetery and a funeral, and then Dr. Henry Frankenstein, even though it was Victor in the book, and his hunchback assistant, Fritz, not Igor. The character Igor wasn't used until Son of Frankenstein with Basil Rathbone, and he was played by Bela Lugosi. They dig up the body. Frankenstein's getting ready for his experiment. They end up needing a brain, so they sneak into the college where Dr. Waldman is teaching, and they go to take a brain. Fritz drops the normal brain and ends up having to take the abnormal. Now, a lot of people brought up, how did Frankenstein not know this was an abnormal brain? Who knows? Anyway, they begin to work on the monster, and we see Frankenstein's father and his fiance are getting concerned, so a friend, Dr. Waldman, and his fiance track him down as they're working, as he's about to conduct the experiment. Naturally, they don't believe him till they see he brought life to the dead body. And I do love the set of Frankenstein's lab. It's the proto mad scientist lab, and it is amazingly done. It's visually interesting with all the electrodes and the sounds. Now, after we see the monsters alive, we don't see it for a while. There's some talking about the monster, and then we get to see a scene with Henry Frankenstein and Dr. Waldman. The monster walks through a door backwards, turns around, and the camera pans in on his face. And at this point, I need to talk about Jack Pierce's brilliant makeup job. Jack Pierce was the Stan Winston of his time. And this makeup shows how talented he really was. Interesting, the makeup took so long to get into that Boris Karloff would sleep in it after shooting because it would take almost as long to get off. And from the electrodes on his neck, because they were glued on, he actually had scars on his neck over it. Now, for some reason unexplained, Fritz begins torturing the monster, scaring him with fire, attacking him with a whip, and he kills Fritz, and it seems like the monster's gonna be docile. Karloff plays him with this childlike ignorance, but we see when he's provoked, he has the capability of violence. And one thing I like in this movie, nothing the monster does is out of militia. In the case of hanging Fritz, Fritz was torturing him. Then Henry and Dr. Waldman drugged Frankenstein, and Dr. Waldman agrees to dissect the monster during Frankenstein's funeral. The monster comes to and kills Dr. Waldman. Again, he didn't know what happened, he just blacked out, and there's this person he doesn't really know, obviously getting ready to do something, so he defends himself like anyone would. And yeah, I'm kind of glancing over details of the plot. This is going to be spoilery, but I don't want to say too much because I want you to see this film for yourself. But that being said, be warned, you're going to hear spoilers in a very old movie. Then the famous / infamous scene where he throws the little girl in the water. Again, it's not out of militia. She's being friends with the monster. She gives him flowers, throws them in the water. Look, I made a boat. Frankenstein does it, then he runs out. He picks her up. He's like, this is fun. She likes seeing them float. She'll be happy if she floats. Then, when he sees she can't swim, he panics and tries to pull her out. And when she drowns, he just runs away in a terror. And again, so much of this movie goes to Bela Lugosi. I mean, Boris Karloff, because of how he did it. Bela Lugosi refused the role because he didn't think there would be much acting to it, which Karloff proved wrong. And this scene is his finest piece of acting because of how he's frightened, terrified, he knows he done something wrong, and he just runs away. He didn't understand the girl was gonna drown. We cut to Frankenstein's wedding, and Colin Clive has some good stuff. Frankenstein's father has some good stuff. There's a good scene with the tradition of the Frankenstein and the groom and the best man having these orange blossoms. And the father of the little girl brings the baby. His daughter, they form a mob to hunt the killer, which is the monster. Colin Clive encounters him, and they have a little tussle, and Frankenstein drags him to a windmill, and the monster drags Frankenstein to the windmill, and again, he's not really doing anything out of militia. He's confused, scared, and he's in a panic. He ultimately throws Frankenstein off the windmill, and they burn the windmill down, and the last we see of the monster is with a wooden beam on him that's burning him, screaming in absolute terror. Boris Karloff defined, in a lot of people's eyes, what cinematic Frankenstein should be, and I love how he brought that childlike innocence to it, but yet at times a sense of menace. The monster, there is no real villain in this story. Frankenstein was wrong for playing God, and he paid for his arrogance. Like the scene where the monster came to life, he goes, "It's alive," and this scene was edited down because the full scene, "It's alive," and he says something like, "In the name of God, now I know what it feels like to be God," which was considered too shocking at the time. And yeah, I think that is crossing a line, but it shows Frankenstein's arrogance created this problem. He thought he can play God, and him and other people paid the price for it. Now, Frankenstein doesn't die. Colin Clive comes back in Bride of Frankenstein, but that's what I like. This movie is an allegory about playing God, and it's masterfully acted by pretty much everyone involved. And unlike Dracula, this has a little music in it at the wedding scene, but again, this is an early sound film and they haven't quite nailed the art yet. So, Frankenstein starring Bela Lugosi. Why do I keep thinking Bela Lugosi? Boris Karloff and Colin Clive. I recommend this even higher than Dracula. As good as Dracula was, I like this film so much better for Karloff's performance and the innocence he brought to the monster. The monster doesn't know. No one taught him. They didn't teach him right from wrong. And like I said, he's like a big kid in that aspect. So, you like the film? Don't like the film? Want to see it? Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, and join me next week, Invisible Man and Creature from the Black Lagoon. Over and out.